Initially, as I mentioned, we had the Autodesk 3ds Max version in deadline 6.1, and it's also in 6.2 and in 7. It extended the variable tau and region rendering that we had before. It supported and still supports single image rendering and animation sequence rendering, and even includes tracking of regions over time, so I can have moving camera, moving objects, and the regions can move around and follow the objects as they're changing position in screen space. And all the regions can be saved with the scene. They can be even stored. Multiple of those setups can be stored per camera. Each camera can carry its own region setups, and you can also save them, load them, merge them using disk files in order to share with other people in the office. In Maya, we actually started developing something that also expands, adds, in addition to the tile rendering, a new Jigsaw option, but it's actually a standalone application that we're using as the region editor. And it's launched from the deadline submitter, the integrated script inside of Maya, and that same application we're reusing for all the other 3D products beyond 3ds Max. So Maya and Model and Rhino currently use exactly the same user interface with the same features. The Maya version supports single images. That means you can render one image with a single job where each task is a separate region, or you can submit an image sequence, that means an animation to be rendered, but currently the regions are static. We don't have the follow feature yet. We will working on it, and probably for 7.1 or at some point in the future, we'll make sure that you can track objects with your regions through the scene, and currently the regions are saved with the Maya scene. So let's switch to Maya and take a look. This is the same car that we were looking at before, but the previous screenshots were from 3ds Max. This is the same situation in Maya, and I'm going to open the submitter from the deadline shelf. I'm going to expand the region rendering area, and now we have a drop-down list here which says Jigsaw rendering or tile rendering. The all tile rendering lets you do what we saw before with providing just a regular grid, or we can go to the Jigsaw option, enable the region rendering, either submit the specific frame or render the whole animation segment that is defined in the scene. And we have to open the Jigsaw panel in order to define our regions. Now, this creates a quick play blast of what's in the viewport and puts that image there as a reference. But we could, for example, go and select this front left tire and say, okay, I want to actually create a fit around the mesh selection region. It took a little bit of thinking because it was checking each vertex in order to tightly fit it around. We can also do a loose fit if I delete those regions and say I want 10% and I want to use the bounding box only and fit the selection. It will be faster and it will be significantly larger because the bounding box is not as tight, and we also added a padding of 10%. Now, I could select this, and selecting is pretty much if you create a window selection that includes the center handle here, or just click on the center handle, it's going to select that entry. And if I click clone right, it creates a new region with exactly the same size to the side. I can grab it, put it over the rear tire, for example. I can resize it to be snugly around this wheel. And then once I have these guys, I can probably go and do the same. I can say add region, grab this region, put it around the logo of the Honda logo here, and say, okay, this will be another region. And now I would have to probably fill everything else with regions in order to render the whole image. And this feature doesn't even exist in the 3ds Max version, but in Maya we have the button that says we want to fill the regions. We click on it and it pretty much fills everything with regions according to the existing ones. And at this point we can start merging some of those because there is no reason to do two here. We can go and say merge these two and probably merge all these guys here, and probably these two can come together. And I can also subdivide, as you know. I can select this guy and say we want to do tiling, for example, 3 by 2. And once I do this, I can keep it like that. That means if I start resizing this, you see that the subdivisions inside the following. But What I can also do is I can split this based on the tiling, say split, and now I have individual regions where I can grab the top, merge them together, keep these guys, and give this one even more subdivisions because we need more machines around here, and so on. So at this point, we can say, okay, yeah, probably I'll merge this one and just give it its own tiling without actually having individual regions. So this is something that I could probably hit a button and submit, and that will go to 20 machines, and it would render there. If I decide to go back, I can press the undo button, and pretty much everything that we just did, we can go back to the beginning, one step after the other. You can see pretty much every operation that I have performed from the beginning. I can go and then redo the whole thing. It has pretty much unlimited during the session undo redo buffer, so you can go back and forth at any point. If I would try to close the dialog at this point, it will ask me about saving, and I can say yes, save it. I can save the Maya file, and then a week later, if I open the same file and open the Jigsaw panel, it's going to read the settings from the node where they're stored, and it will restore the same regions that I have already defined. And other things that I can do, let's take a look. Basically, with this button, you can reset the background. That means if you made a selection, for example, I selected here just the wheel and hit the reset background, is going to snapshot another, or at least it's supposed to. It looks like it might have been broken in the latest build. It's supposed to actually update the bitmap once again. Ah, here it is. It just forgot to refresh until pulled around. All right. So with this system, you can pretty much define the regions as you feel they should be submitted to various machines, and you have really fast and intuitive controls. You can go and, for example, this is kind of neat. If I go and delete this region here, now these pixels wouldn't be rendered. And in theory, you have two ways to fix this, actually multiple ways. One way would be to select this guy and clone it to the left. Another way would be to create a new region and try to snap it there. And snapping is actually pretty easy because it actually really snaps when you do this. But let's say that this is deleted and I want to fill any regions that are not there. I'll delete this one too. All I have to do is say, again, fill regions, and it's fixed. And if I create a region that is somehow overlapping another region and those pixels would be rendered twice, and that makes no sense at all, I can create many of those and put one here and so on. Just click in the clear regions, removes anything that is duplicate. So it's pretty intuitive and fun to use system in order to get your Jigsaw subdivisions. And then once you're done, you say save, you hit submit, and you get your jobs running and subdividing the image, and then a draft job assembles the whole thing. I won't really do any of that now because we don't really have the time, but we want to take a quick look at the Modo and Rhino implementation. I won't go into those applications, I'll just talk a little bit about them. As I mentioned, they use exactly the same standalone user interface to define the regions. So once you learn the Maya one, you can use the one in Modo and Rhino, exactly the same controls, exactly the same look. And currently, they both use only static regions for a single large format printing image. So no animation support there yet. And of course, we'll be looking into adding support for more applications in the future. Here is a quick screenshot of the Modo Jigsaw user interface. As you can see, it's pretty much the same as in Maya. And this is the one taken from Rhino. Same principle, same controls, and does exactly the same job. So in conclusion, Jigsaw was designed to save you a lot of time when you have to render high resolution images or when you have to produce multiple iterations of the same content again and again and again, and only a few pixels are changing here and there, and you don't want to re-render the whole image because of that, and you don't really want to render regions and pass them to a compositor to actually slap them on top of a previous image. Everything happens automatically and it's very intuitive. So that means you can maximize also the use of your render resources. If you have multiple machines sitting idle around, you can take a single image and send it to many machines, and you get it in a fraction of the time. And you can also decide how big your regions are, so all the machines render in approximately the same time. You can reduce the memory footprint of your rendering. If it's a very large image, you just split it in as many pieces as makes sense in order to avoid running out of memory for the output frame buffer, or generally for the rendering process. And this works with any renderer that supports region rendering. Even if the renderer itself doesn't support distributed bucket rendering and so on. That means the standard Maya renderer, the scanline renderer in 3ds Max, the Mentor arrays and the V-rays, and all the renderers available that support rendering a subset of pixels from the final image. We can do Jigsaw region rendering with those renderers. The only exception that comes to mind right now is Krakatoa. Unfortunately, our own Krakatoa renderer doesn't really let us do region rendering, but it's a technical limitation because of the way it actually processes the particles. But pretty much all the geometry renderers out there support region rendering, and in the typical 3D applications, that should be no problem to do.